presentation.
He'll be fine on the mountain.
JB and Darren on the JB and Goldwater Show.
Line drive right field, base hit. South Carolina wins the College World Series. Watson, touchdown. Hunter Renfrow. He got him, and it's all over. Coastal Carolina rules the roost. They win the championship. And South Carolina has won the national championship.
The Citadel baseball team has done it again, but this time the Bulldogs beat one of the top teams in the country. They are giant killers. Get the ball to Bennett. He does.
Gamecocks are in the Final Four.
All right, greetings and a good Tuesday afternoon, and welcome aboard the JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online, and driven by our friends and yours at Stokes Volkswagen. Find them at stokesvw.com. Find us on the JB and Goldwater app. You can download that and have it in your phone, and you can watch and listen to our program daily, anywhere you would like to, anywhere in the world. And we know that thousands of you do that, and we certainly appreciate that. You can also follow us across all social media platforms at JB and Goldwater, individually at Sports Media JB, and at Darren Goldwater. Also head to jbandgoldwatershow.com for more. You can always check out our store there as well if you'd like to get some gear, some cool gear. It's at jbandgoldwatershow.com. 843-321-8893 is our phone number, and that is also our text line, and it is open and available for all of you. And you can always comment in any chat room that you've got at your disposal, like YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and things like that. And Darren will put your comments publicly up on the screen, or we'll fuss and discuss here as we move along through the program. Speaking of which, Hale McGranahan with thebigspur.com is going to join us at 12:30. He's headed back from Hoover, where he, of course, covered Shane Beamer and other head coaches, amongst many things, at the 2021 SEC Media Days event at the Winfrey Hotel. So we'll get a report from him in less than 30 minutes. We'll also get a report from the Upstate. Dabo Sweeney today covering Clemson's Media Day ahead of the ACC Media Days. Of course, Clemson does this every single year at their facility. So we'll talk to Dabo about that, obviously, or Dabo. We'll talk to Gene about that. We'll obviously get his thoughts on what has been going on over in Alabama as well. And we've got some SEC content to get across. We'll talk about some of the QB situations going on in the league. Just how deep is the league at quarterback this year? How unknown is it? I think it's fairly unknown with the exception of a couple big names. So that's coming. Dan Mullen said something yesterday that he wished that the SEC would do away with crossover division games. We've talked about this before. Everybody has. But will it happen? And why should it happen? There's another coach who was on the podium today who says he loves the crossover games, and we'll give you his reason here coming up in just a little while. We've got some Olympic stuff to pass on. There's a big vote going on in baseball out on the West Coast, if you don't know about it, pertaining to one team or one organization in particular. So there's a lot to discuss over the next couple of hours. But first and foremost, it is sunny currently, but rain is headed our way. And good afternoon, Darren Goldwater.
I'll say this about Shane Beamer yesterday. As expected, he knocked it out of the park. I was glad that Paul Feinbaum was so open and saying that this has been the way he's felt about Beamer really ever since his first conversation with him, that he is a genuine guy. He believes that to be true. Now we'll see if the guy can coach, right? We know he is a media pro. We know he is a marketing pro, better than a lot of media and marketing pros that are out there. He is controlling his message very, 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 very well. And he is dictating the narrative being written about his Gamecocks right now. That's great. He did well yesterday. Now we'll see what happens next.
Yeah, I think I first of all, it was a grand slam. I mean, he was sensational at the podium. What was wonderful to see, and here the reaction from his appearance has been nothing short of fascinating, phenomenal, whatever you want to call it. And it's the first time in a while. You know, one of the main differences in comparing Shane to his predecessor, Will Muschamp, is, you know, you hear guys like I've even said this before, and you hear other guys say this. Will Muschamp is a great guy, and a lot of times what you see on the podium or what you see in front of a TV screen isn't the Will Muschamp that we actually know a little bit. You know, he's a really good guy. He's funny. He's solid. You know, I like Will on a personal level. I like Will. But what you see with Shane Beamer is what you get. Like the Shane Beamer that was on that podium is the Shane Beamer that's on our show. It's the Shane Beamer that was on Fox News. It's the Shane Beamer that's on 107.5 The Game. Like, you see what I'm saying here? I mean, there isn't a different Shane Beamer for any platform, for any camera, for any newspaper writer, for the little old lady in the grocery store, for the kid that wants to know. There's no different Shane Beamer from any of the other ones. It's just Shane. Mm-hmm. And I remember when we were in this process or going through the process covering it, Darren, of this hiring before it was made official. You know, one of the things that JC Sherbert said on our show was Shane is Shane. And it was like, that's cool. What does that mean? And here we are, you know, a little over 7 months later, and we're seeing that. He hasn't changed a lick. You know what I mean? So, but here's what kind of, this is what I gravitated towards yesterday. I'm a big believer in media days kicks off football season, but it doesn't determine football season. It generates our excitement. Every fan base out there starts to feel pretty good about it. And then I'm also a big believer of it's only about 4 days long, especially in the SEC, and then it's over, and let's focus on football, and let's actually see if anything that we heard over those 3 or 4 days matters at all. Like, that's the way I believe in things.
Well, yeah, I mean, it can't be more than that, right? Because it can't actually impact the games, because that's all it is talk.
That's exactly right. Like, nothing that was said by any coach or that will be said is going to directly impact any game that we see. It's not going to determine one outcome this season, okay? But in saying that, where South Carolina has been, and other programs are like this often across the country, you need a bolt of energy in your program somehow, some way. You've got to change it. You got to change the narrative, and there's multiple ways to do that. Where South Carolina has been, they have been essentially behind the 8 ball at this main attraction for the last few years, and it's not their fault. Will Muschamp was their coach, and as soon as he got hired, it was instant ridicule for why is this guy back coaching in the SEC? He shouldn't be a head coach. South Carolina really screwed this up. Everybody knew the track record. It was an instant. He had to climb out of a negative hole immediately. Okay, we all knew that. We saw it, and I would give him some credit. You know, I think that there were some times early in his tenure where he did. Winning 9 games certainly helped in year number 2. But as you said, and you're right, you're spot on. I totally agree. You can't win games at media days, but you can win hearts and minds at media days. You can do that. And it's easy to step up there and put that coach's face on. Darren, we see a lot of guys do this all the time, or just be another guy on the podium, or be the headlines with some comment, right? Or some stance on something, or something like that. You know, something that grabs the headlines. It's easy for that to happen, whether it's good or bad. But then there's what Shane did, where he kind of just stepped up there, and we're basing his performance on the wow factor. Mm-hmm. And that can be a difference in the future of the program. I'm not saying that one word that he said will win or lose a game this year, but it can be a difference in the future of the program, because now there was about 150 guys still in that room when he was up there. Those guys don't have a choice today. Like, they can't write something instantly negative like they did under the Will Muschamp umbrella. Like, they don't have there's nothing to do. And that does influence people. What a lot of the public knew and didn't know about Will Muschamp was just the clips that they saw, the words that they read, those type of things. There's nothing yesterday that you can pull from that's going to back you up at all. It's only going to move you forward. And so I do think that what he did yesterday truly, really does matter from a positivity standpoint in creating and changing the culture at South Carolina. And that's not just being written about by the Big Spur or Gamecock Central. David Cloninger, all these guys that cover it every day. That's now being written over in Alabama. That's now being written in Tennessee. That's being written in Texas. They've been recruiting guys from these states. You realize that, right? So like there, you can generate a vibe. Now you got to go out and get those kids, and you got to bring them in. You got to develop them and things like that. But at least you're not having to jump over the hurdle of you don't want to play for that guy.
He continued the narrative of this entire offseason. Well, ever since he's been hired, he continued the narrative. So what he's done so well, this was a chance to get in front of more national folks. But as Paul Feinbaum said, he's been a big proponent from day one, from talking to Shane Beamer. But he was able to get on the national stage, as you said, and that does matter. It matters for recruits. The Tennessean was one of a number of papers that basically said, winners and losers of day one. Shane Beamer's just a flat out, he's on the winning side because of his approach. And I think for a lot of folks, rightly so, it's not like we've covered the ins and outs of the offseason at Vanderbilt or Tennessee or Ole Miss that closely, or as closely as we have that of the Gamecocks and Clemson. So for a lot of folks, they're hearing it for the first time.
Yeah.
For us, it was the same thing, but it's the same thing on a bigger stage.
That's right.
And a very poised presentation of it. And when you hear the phrase controlling the narrative, that matters, because you said, no one has a choice now. You can't write negative things, because he's handling these questions and delivering his answers how he wants people to take them. When he was asked about his dad almost taking the Alabama job, his answer was about his dad having so much respect for South Carolina. It's how you answer things. It's how you go about things. It's nothing new to us. So for me, my perception of it was good. You're continuing to control the narrative. It was impressive only in that it was on a bigger stage, but it was very much expected that he said and did exactly what he did. And I think the most impressive thing to me was his answer to Feinbaum when he said, look, I'm not going to sugarcoat things here. I'm not going to sit here and say we didn't have deficiencies. I'm paraphrasing here. I'm not a direct quote, but he basically said, there were holes on the roster that we've had to address. I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat things. I'm here for a reason, was one of the things he said. The reason was they weren't very good. They haven't been very good. So he's honest, yet he still has this positive spin on the whole thing that, again, controls the narrative, which it matters for recruits like Oscar Delp in particular, as that started getting trending again. Yet.
Yeah, we're going to talk to Hale about that coming up in about 15 minutes. Yeah, but you mentioned recruits. I think it was absolutely a recruiting pitch yesterday, but not just for players, for everybody. Mm-hmm. I think it was like, look at South Carolina. I mean, he rattled off. I also found this interesting. I am going to take a shot at that team in the upstate because he doesn't say their name either. There's a group that covers them that wrote an article about Shane Beamer at Media Days. They have their own Media Day today and ACC Media Days tomorrow, but yeah, they want to write an article about Shane referencing the national championships won by other programs at the University of South Carolina. That's called like in your head type stuff. You know what I mean? I'm not talking about Dabo and Clemson. I'm just talking about some of the goofballs that cover some of these programs. And like, but it's working. And Dabo's done this for years. Dabo's controlled the narrative up there for years. How many times have people laughed at him? And I'm not necessarily saying Shane is trying to be Dabo or that he should be Dabo or anything like that. But it's worked.
It's very close. It's very, the thought crossed my mind. I was like, I remember how annoying I thought Dabo was when he was hired. It's like, what is this guy? Like, you're a salesman. Are you a football coach? There is a lot of that in Shane Beamer, and we don't have the answer to are you a football coach because we don't know. Very similar to Dabo. Yeah,
there are so many similarities, and there's a lot of Carolina fans that don't want to hear that and don't want to recognize that. And from a fandom type standpoint, I understand that, but I think it's also worthy of acknowledging that what Coach Sweeney has done has worked. With people laughing in his face. I mean, he continued to spin things way off the radar when Carolina was kicking their rear ends every year, right? And he didn't care that everybody was laughing at him. All he cared about was the people that he needed to buy into the message were doing that, and it worked out. And so Shane was up there saying what he believes, and he. You could tell truly does believe in this program, and his recruiting pitch wasn't just to players. It was to the media. It was to the fans. It was to anybody that was willing to listen as to why you can be successful at South Carolina. And that's one of the reasons he referenced other programs that have been and that have won, national championships there. And so, I thought it was a brilliant performance. One of the conversations I had with somebody last night was very simple. He gets it, and you'll pop these pictures up in a second, but like, think about this. He those that aren't able to watch our program, we have a side-by-side right now, if you haven't seen it, of Shane basically recreating, of course, with the help of JJ. Apparently it's not Enigbare, it's Enagbury. And it's not
JJ, it's Kingsley.
He was using. We're gonna have to clarify this. We'll talk to him before the season, so we'll get Shane to wrap this up for us. Let me send Steve a note. But Nick Muse and JJ Enigbare and Beamer there, kind of recreating Spurrier's image from about 9 years ago at an Arby's over there in Alabama as they were about to head back out of town. That's something that Shane knew about. He didn't need a PR guy to come tell him about that. Like that, he's one of the things that I appreciate. Shane is doing what he's doing on his own. And I don't know if it's going to work out, guys. We might look up in 5 years and they've won 5 games. I have no idea. We might look up in 5 years and they've won 50 games. I have literally no idea how this is going to work out. But he's doing it the way that he wants to do it. And he's embracing the best time in the history of the program. Like, he's not like, well, Spurrier did it this way. This is my way. I'm going to do it this way. A lot of what Steve did worked. And, like, there are things that worked, like even the little things. He hasn't said the word Clemson one time. That might be offensive to Clemson fans, but he doesn't care.
Doesn't matter. Ohio State, Michigan do similar things, too. That stuff is fan stuff.
Exactly. That's his way of energizing a fan base. People notice that. They're like, I saw a new sports writer in this state yesterday reference that, he didn't even use the word Clemson. Well, he hasn't in 8 months, and that's the way he gets it. He gets the rivalry, he gets the state, but most importantly, he gets the program. He's having fun with the Spurrier stuff. So we'll see how it all works out, man. But like, he understands what it takes to be successful at South Carolina. Does that mean that he's going to be successful? No, that's not what it means. I understand what it takes to be successful at South Carolina. If you put me in charge, I wouldn't be successful. So, I mean, but he did a really good job yesterday. And if you had to give him a grade, you certainly give him an A+. And now it's back to the grind. And in just a couple of weeks, they'll be practicing, Darren. And as you mentioned, that's when it will really start to matter.
What he's done so well, and you can take away any breakdown or however you want to tear this thing apart, or just in your voice, what you're giving right now is what a lot of Gamecock fans feel. There's genuine excitement. There's curiosity that's mixed into that excitement, but there's a feel of, we got one of us, we got a guy who gets it, and there's a community like rallying sense that I can feel just from being around you. In some ways, and I mean this in the best possible way, but it's going to come off where, like, it's annoying, but it's not right. Annoying in a bad way.
No, I hear you.
Right? So I mean that in a very good way, because there's so much positivity flowing. That's why I'm constantly sitting back here like, guys, we haven't seen them on the field. Like, they haven't put on pads.
Yeah, they won 2 games last year.
Right. So I get this, and totally. I understand the excitement, and it's warranted, right? I mean, I've gone through recently and unfollowed a whole ton of people because I just don't have time for the mess. And a lot of those were coaches and writers and blogs, and like, I just don't care. The only reason that I am still following Shane Beamer isn't because of his welcome home and his Gamecocks nonsense. There's so much positivity there that it's just like, all right, if I scroll through something and I see it, I know it's positive. You sense that in the fan base. You really do. And maybe that leads to something. Maybe that's helping in recruiting. Maybe. But right now, I get where your excitement's coming from.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, this is, I said something, months ago. I said back in December, I said, hey, look, don't be scared to jump on the bandwagon. Like, if you want to be a fan, you've gone through, especially for the people that didn't like the Will Muschamp hire, lived and died with every single loss, every single game, every bad play call, every moment he blew up on the sidelines, anytime he said something they didn't like. There's just a lot of people who were never on board. And like, my pitch to them was, okay, well, that era is over. And so instead of living in fear of what's to come, or living in denial that this program could ever win again, or just living in misery because of what you've seen over the last couple, 2-3 years combined, pretty much, give yourself a reason to be excited. And that reason probably could come from the guy that's now leading your program. I mean, I don't know of those who hasn't paid attention, but the last month has been a wild ride on the recruiting front. Like, you can't have a better summer than they've had. Like, especially after winning 6 combined games in 2 years, like that you could not recreate that any better than you have. Now, again, you got to go win games. But I think the other thing that this has kind of done, though, Darren, is that people are still going to be upset when they lose. And boy, they'll really be upset if they get beat by a team like Eastern Illinois, which they won't, but you get my point here. But at the same time, there are still going to, those people, the large majority of them, you can't change everybody, are still going to be, hey, it's a process, and we're going to give him his time. Will didn't really get that. Like, he was already behind the 8 ball when he got hired at South Carolina. People saw the failures at Florida. They weren't willing to give him a chance. They felt like he was 3rd or 4th on the list, and maybe he was when it came time to making that hire, for Coach Tanner. And so, it just turned into a jumbled mess, Darren. I mean, listen, you go, exactly what we've heard over the last few years. Fire Ray Tanner, fire the president, fire Will Muschamp, fire the water boy, the guy that cleaned the floor. It was slippery. Fire that guy. If Will Muschamp had anything, he hired him. That's all it is. Fire everybody. Fire Frank Martin because he talked to Will Muschamp. Fire this guy. Fire. And I think people are going to come off of that a little bit, even when they lose games. And they're going to lose games this year. They're going to lose a few games this year, if not more than that. Like, it's going to happen. But I think people at least see that this thing probably is headed in the right direction, and we can continue to stay positive about it. And you didn't have that with Will Muschamp. I mean, the first loss in his tenure, it was like, oh my, shoot, the first game. Muschamp beat Vanderbilt. Yeah, he beat Vanderbilt. Who cares? Everybody beats. You know what I mean? Like, it was that type thing.
A lot of folks were saying it. I mean, I'd credit him if I remember exactly who, but it was a few who even said it on this program when Beamer was hired and he first started this wave of positivity. And it was essentially, okay, the reason this is good is because when you hit adversity, and that won't happen until the season, until these losses you're describing happen, when you hit adversity, you're going to need that to help you bounce back. You're going to need that to maybe not help you bounce back, but prevent you from falling into some, abyss because, oh God, here we go again. At least the foundation of that he's building right now, this excitement, positivity that's out there all the time, this belief, this home, everything he's selling when they do hit adversity, and it's going to happen. And it could be pretty extreme at times. When they do hit it, he can fall back on that, and the team can fall back on that and say, okay, I understand that, but here's where we are. Here's the foundation we're built on, and because of that, we can handle it. That's part of what we want to see, not just can you win games, but how do you handle losing games until you get to that point?
Yeah, and how do you handle other things? I mean, God forbid there's a big injury. Every program gets one. Carolina got a really bad one last August when Marshawn Lloyd went down. Mm-hmm. So like those things are going to happen. Like we can't live in fairy tale land. And, I know that, I wear my colors proudly, but I try to be as balanced and honest about things as I can be. And I know that some people laugh at it, but that's okay. Like bad things are going to happen. What's important is that you don't go to the bottom of the barrel when that happens. You might have to tread water a little bit, but you're not sinking. Mm-hmm. And this program has really been sinking over the last couple of years. And I mean, now you've at least like, there you go. You're putting the picture up again. Like, who did it better? I'll be honest with you.
Beamer's look is Beamer looks sharp. Spurrier looks like he just kind of rolled out of bed.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I can't ever go against Steve. I mean, see, that's just kind of Steve. But the Shane side, JJ and Nick were killing it there in the background. That was pretty funny. So I'll just kind of wrap it up again with this. Like, it's okay to be excited. Football's supposed to be fun. Why do we wait on a season all year long that we can't stand while it's happening for 4 months? We don't, like, we wait on football because we love football. So, and I think that's kind of one of those underlying messages from Shane. Like, y'all love it like I love it here. So enjoy it. Yeah, things are going to happen, but it's a process, and we're going to work through it together. And there was none of that, unfortunately, with Will Muschamp. Yeah, there were people who certainly supported him, and there were people who defended him. I'm one of them. I'll put my hand up and say it. I'm not going to hide behind that. I absolutely defended Will Muschamp because he was the coach, and I thought there were some things he was doing well, but it didn't work. And it was a splintered marriage from the get-go, and we all knew that. And Shane has just kind of stepped right in and brought the energy back, and that does translate if you do it right. We all know that it's a little bit of a different day and age from when Steve Spurrier got hired in 2005. The energy was certainly there, but you didn't have the tweeters of the world and the Facebooks and the Snapchats and all these other little deals out there where you could give your opinion on everything. You have it now. And so as much as you can change for you, I mean, who was it just a minute ago? Tyler and Craig commented about Oscar Delp. I'll just tell y'all this, and this is my firsthand information. I'd say secondhand information from somebody who's directly involved. If you think that what's happening right now on social media surrounding Oscar Delp isn't helping, boy, are you crazy? Like, is this kid going to come in and be the next Tim Tebow? Or I don't know.
Or anybody. Or is he even going to come in? But is it helping? Of course, it's helping. I mean, how many times in the last couple of weeks have we had somebody on the air that has said, look, this fan base, the positivity you're getting from them, not just the head coach, but the fans in general, who, as we've documented many times, and as anyone knows who is a fan of the Gamecocks and who's ever gone on a message board for like half a second, sometimes you're not the most positive group in the world. So the positivity has made a difference, and it's being noticed. Does it get Delp on campus? I don't know, but it's more helpful than not.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This is the new age of recruiting, Darren. Let's have everybody tweet about recruits. And then, of course, there's always the ones that when it doesn't work out, they'll tweet something that you probably don't want to hear, the recruits. I do want to pass this along. I think this is just so funny. Arby's tweeted this morning, we're going to frame this. The photo of Spurrier and Beamer. A little bit of a problem there, though, Arby's. Nick Muse and JJ Enagbari are in the back of that one.
Oh, you can crop it.
We're in the NIL era, right? So careful.
What about
you put on your walls?
Switched from Pepsi to Coke in between the two pictures.
That's true.
It's another issue you've got on your hand. But all of that's croppable and editable.
That's right. Somebody better crop it out. It is. That was when I saw that yesterday. That was one of those quickly laugh out louds. That was really good.
They retweeted. I don't know. I guess it was Gamecock Football's account. I'm not sure exactly which one it was they retweeted with a fire emoji over Shane Beamer. I mean, he looked good. He looked sharp. I'll give him that.
Guys, these are the things that you need. This is what you need. It's been good stuff so far. Today on the schedule over in Hoover, Kirby Smart has already met with the media. Josh Heupel has wrapped up as well. Mark Stoops and Lane Kiffin are ahead this afternoon. I'm sure many are excited to hear Kiffin and what he's got to say. He didn't get to address the media publicly last year at Media Days. Tomorrow, of course, is Saban, Clark Lee, Mike Leach, and Jimbo. You talk about heavily attended. Clark Lee's going to be looking around going, how many of these people are actually here for me? And then on Thursday, Eli Drinkwitz, Sam Pittman, and Brian Harsin will wrap up this year's SEC Media Days. Speaking of which, we do have Hale McGranahan coming up next. He is on the road back from Hoover. We'll get his thoughts on Shane and many of the hot topics in SEC land. Do want to pass this along as well. ESPN, this is just not a shocker. College Game Day has chosen Clemson and Georgia for the site of their show on September the 4th.
Stunning. They're also going to be the week before. They're doing a special one out at the MEAC SWAC Challenge as well.
Yeah, in Atlanta, I think, right?
I believe so.
Don't they play that at Mercedes-Benz now? I'm pretty sure they do.
I'm not sure, but I do believe it's in Atlanta.
And Lee Corso will be back on the set this year, so that'll be neat. All right, got to hit a timeout. Hale McGranahan with the Big Spur joins us next on the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen.
This is Mike Mazzell for Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road with exciting news. It's springtime and we're playing ball. Most dealerships don't have any inventory, but at Stokes Volkswagen we do. So we're playing ball on every new Volkswagen in stock. Every new Volkswagen available with zero down. Qualified buyers can sign and drive with interest-free financing for 60 months. Remember, Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road is the fastest, easiest way to sell your car and get the most money for your trade. Plus, we'll take any trade in any condition, paid off or not. Is your credit in a slump?
Strike two.
If you've got $500 down and you make at least $2,000 per month, car lenders can get you approved. So if you want to strike out, that's okay. But if you want to hit a home run and save on a new Volkswagen, come see us today at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road or StokesVW.com.
$1,666 per month per $1,000 borrowed for 60 months at 0% APR with zero down. Plus tax tag. Includes $499.50 administration fee. Subject to VCI credit approval. Expires month end.
Peace and love at Stokes VW.
Wando Power Equipment, the trusted home of Hustler zero-turn residential and commercial mowers. There is nobody more trusted in South Carolina than our friends from Wando Power Equipment. They've been providing elite commercial and residential service for over 30 years. Landscape Services have turned to their selection of Hustler zero-turn mowers like the Raptor. Bigger, stronger, faster, and the most durable Raptor Hustler has ever designed. Located on Daniel Island and online at wandopower.com. Wando Power Equipment, owned by the Price family, the home of Hustler zero-turn mowers, rentals, service, and specializing in family and friendship.
Shrimping season's back. That means local caught shrimp. That's right. Local caught shrimp back on the menu at the Dog and Duck. All three locations, Bell Hall, Park West, and Clements Ferry Road, now featuring once again local caught hand-breaded shrimp, plus other daily specials like the Game Day Burger every Wednesday, Rib Night on Friday, rotating taps all the time, and all the TVs you can possibly imagine for whatever you want to watch. The Dog and Duck in Bell Hall, Park West, and on Clements Ferry Road.
What's up, everybody? This is South Carolina singer-songwriter Patrick Davis, and I might live in Nashville, Tennessee now, but guess what? I can always keep up with the news back in South Carolina because I've got the JB and Goldwater Show. Thank you, JB and Darren, for being live, loud, and online.
12:34 Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back. The JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen. Dabo Sweeney is now meeting with the media. A full report on that at 1:30. Gene Sapakoff is live in Clemson. Hale McGranahan's live on I-20, heading back to Columbia, South Carolina from Hoover, the Winfrey Hotel, the site of SEC Media Days. Newly engaged Hale McGranahan, I should add. Hey, bud.
Not quite newly, but
newly enough.
I am on 20. I can't confirm that.
I'll say this, man. When I was making the new graphic for you today, I was tired of the old picture. So I just, I Google people's names and images, and I found your wedding registry and a nice dapper suit, Hale McGranahan, on the graphic today.
Well, I appreciate your gift. I'll assume that it's already been purchased and picked out, and my fiance will probably be telling me about it tonight when she gets home from work.
Yep.
Hey,
Thank you.
Yeah. I didn't say I bought you anything. I said I got a picture for us.
Oh, I just assumed you bought me.
Are you eating at a Arby's today, Hale?
I'm not. No, I did just get a nice beef stick from a gas station.
Oh, you'll be pulling over sooner than you think. That's great.
Well, it was 67 miles from Columbia. I think I might be able to hold on.
You'll be okay. Yeah, there you go. All right, Hale. We led off today with a lot of reaction to what Shane had to say yesterday. He didn't really necessarily get into the nuts and bolts because I don't know that we've had to. Well, I will get into one of those nuts and bolts, if you want to call it. Maybe it's a bolt in just a moment as it pertains to Oscar Delp. But over the last 18 hours or so, the coverage, post coverage of Shane's appearance at media days been a little bit different from the last few years. Hale McGranahan. I mean, I know that folks like you who cover this program every day have talked to him multiple times. We kind of knew what we would get over there, but this was the first taste of Shane Beamer as a head coach, and maybe just in general or ever to some of the folks who were covering this event, and it was overwhelmingly positive. I think most out there look at his media day appearance and say that was an A+. He was sensational, and South Carolina maybe has a good one moving forward.
Yeah, the thing that stood out to me when he was in the main room was just sort of the overall tone and inflection in his voice. He just sounded different than the guy that we've gotten here speak a lot over the last 7-8 months or however long it's been since he's been head coach. He spoke with authority and really just kind of came across as a guy who's been preparing for that moment for his entire life. And I think that's safe to say that is the case. And he hammered home on a bunch of points that he wanted to get across, and certainly fired up the fan base. And I think especially fired folks up with his words about wanting to get the ball to the tight end and how important it is, and really left a lot to folks' imaginations when it came to the things he was saying about that position specifically. So it was an overall a good appearance in the main room, and it was more nuts and bolts-ish, if you will, when we got to speak to him, the local media, when we got to talk to him before he went on to the main stage and asked some specific questions about the team and personnel and that kind of like hardcore fan stuff that doesn't always necessarily come up in the Q&A portion of that big room opportunity that he had yesterday, and that every head coach has when they're at SEC Media Day. So overall, a really good appearance, and as John Del Bianco and I have been riding back and tuning in on the XM college football or college station or whatever, and heard a few folks say they were impressed by what Shane had to say. So I would say he won his first Media Days appearance, so now he can gear up for what matters the most, and that's the start of preseason camp here in a few weeks.
Yeah, there were some national members. Feinbaum won. I saw Marty Smith tweeted a photo out of him and Ryan McGee and Shane, and he was saying how proud of Shane he is. They've known each other a long time, for folks that maybe don't realize that. That's all pretty good stuff. What about the media members that you interacted with? Any conversations that you had, folks maybe kind of poking and prying a little bit into the Gamecock football program from others around the SEC and Shane Beamer? What did they have to say to you specifically, if you had any of those type talks?
Yeah, I had a couple, not a ton. There are a few folks I know who've crossed paths with Shane over the years at his various stops, and everyone, it's consistent. Everyone likes him a lot and is impressed by him and thinks awfully highly of him, and are excited to see what he can do from that head coach seat. So nothing really new or groundbreaking or anything like that from me talking with a handful of folks yesterday. But he certainly is highly thought of and respected, and I think there are plenty of those people who are really kind of pulling for him and want to see him do well, because it's one of those things where if you're in the business and you get to know coaches and players and you have good relationships with them, you certainly would like to see them succeed and do well. And I think Shane has established that kind of rapport with pretty much everybody he's interacted with and come across over the years.
Hale McGranahan with the Big Spurt. We've spent this whole time talking about Shane Beamer, which is great. He's the new head football coach at South Carolina. He's creating a lot of buzz. He's generating a lot of buzz, Hale. But what do others in Hoover think of the South Carolina football program itself? like in general. I mean, its chances at it being what it was under Steve Spurrier, its history, what it went through with Will Muschamp. Have you spoken with some of your peers across the SEC in the media, and what are their thoughts on this program?
I think it's kind of one of those things where they know the challenges that are built into this job when you have to play, obviously, Clemson every year and compete with them in the state. For the state's top players, that's going to be a challenge. Georgia's on the schedule every year. The A&M's on the schedule every year. Florida's, back in a good place, and they're on the schedule every year. And Tennessee, when they're not, stubbing their toes every time they turn around, that's a tough opponent. So I think there's just a lot of folks who are just kind of wondering if it can get back to that point. I don't think anyone's sitting there saying like, no, it's impossible. Like they'll never return to that 10-win kind of expectation where South Carolina was for a few seasons about a decade ago. But I think sort of the overall outlook on it right now is like, hey, it's probably going to take a little time to get back to that point. And the jury is obviously still kind of out on a head coach who's never been a head coach before. So I think a lot of folks are in wait and see mode at this point.
Mm-hmm. All right, Hale, let's talk about, and then we'll talk about some of the nuts and bolts, as you mentioned, of this program and some of what we've heard over the last 24 hours or so, and then we'll kind of take a drive around the SEC, and then we'll let you get back to actually driving your car to Columbia, South Carolina. But he did meet with local media yesterday, of course. I've seen a lot of those comments, but what was most interesting of them to you?
From what Beamer said?
Yes.
Geez.
That's it? Just geez?
I don't know. I'm trying to think this. So it's hard to digest everything. You hear, all these people talking, you got to kind of jog the memory a little bit. I don't know. For me, since I'm really into following the roster and roster management and recruiting and all that stuff, obviously we knew that Karan Prunty was in last week. I think his first workout over what we reported was last Monday. So we was able to talk a little bit about him and how they wanted to bring in another impact guy into the secondary. They felt good about where they were from a numbers standpoint, but they really wanted to make sure if they were going to go get another DB from the portal for this season, that they wanted it to be a guy who they thought could come in and help out immediately. And I truly believe that they think Karan Prunty is going to be the guy who's going to start Nasa camp and come back when Eastern Illinois rolls. So.
Let me ask it this way, Hale.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this way. So he has mentioned a couple of times. He even brought it up yesterday, a conversation that he had with his father a long time ago. But it's certainly something he believes, and I think anybody that's been around college football should understand this to be true. If you're good in the trenches, you got a chance to be pretty good. And he also mentioned special teams. Yeah. I tweeted something out a couple of days ago based on the 24/7 composite rankings all time. 2 of the top 4 recruits to ever sign with South Carolina are on campus right now on the same defensive unit, on the same defensive line. Zach Pickens and Jordan Birch. There's another guy, I think his name's JJ Enigbari, preseason All-American. He kind of a pretty good player. They brought in Jordan Strawn, who's put on almost 30 pounds, led the nation in sacks last year. You've got 84 combined starts returning on the offensive line. You have a 5th-year kicker in special teams. He says he feels pretty good about all 3 of those units. How good do you think he really feels?
I think he should feel really good because that, in talking with another media friend of mine yesterday, I mentioned that how good they are and experienced they are up front on both sides, and that's something that you can really hang your hat on, and I'm sure that's something they plan on trying to maximize. But you can say all that, and obviously it helps, but more so now than ever, it comes down to quarterback play and what you can get out of that position, and that's a question mark on this team going into the season, and whether it's Luke Doty holding on to the starting job and becoming a good player like I think he can be, or Jason Brown stepping up and taking the job from him. That I think that position is a little bit more important, big picture wise, than the offensive and defensive line. Yeah, it's great that those two units are as talented and as experienced as they are, but there's a little more to it than that, in my opinion. And not to say my opinion's any better than Shane Beamer or definitely Frank Beamer's, but they got to get things figured out at quarterback. That's the biggest thing in my eyes.
How confident do you think that he and Marcus Satterfield, that entire – I mean, I've talked to a staff member up there and who's on the offensive side of the ball, and his words to me were, hey, look, we've got a little time. We've got some game time to get this thing kind of where we want it to be. And what I took that to be was they open with Eastern Illinois and East Carolina. They're not opening in the SEC. They've got 8 quarters basically to run a quarterback out there, more than likely Luke Doty, and be able to kind of ease him into the season. So I guess my question to you, based on your research, we just talked about, up front on the offensive line. Yeah, we've talked about the defense, special teams, and things like that. There is a guy who's a preseason All-American candidate who led this SEC in rushing last year in the regular season. His name's Kevin Harris, running back, fairly large human. He'll be back there. There's also a kid who was a preseason freshman All-American last year who didn't get a chance to play, and Marshawn Lloyd. You're seeing Zaquandre White and things like that. Their names are popping up. So they feel really good about that position. They feel good about the guys up front. According to Shane, they feel pretty good about their tight end group, and there might be a bunch of them playing. And then, you're like, okay, well, our quarterback is capable. We just got to get him to maybe where he's confident. So what does that look like? Like in the conversations that you've had, how confident are they in Doty or whomever they run out there at quarterback based on what surrounds him?
Yeah, I know coming out of the spring that they were, the staff, I should say, were pleased with what they saw with Luke, and everyone was pretty adamant in saying that, hey, he was the best quarterback throughout the duration of spring practice. Obviously, there's a summer to get through, but, coming out of that, 15 practice window earlier this year, it was Luke Doty for sure. What it looks like in that position here in a month, we'll see. But yeah, JB, you talked about the 2 games with Eastern Illinois and East Carolina, and they can run the ball 40 plus times in each game and probably win both of those games pretty convincingly, I would think. So I'm kind of curious to see how the reps at the quarterback position look over the course of those 2 games. Like, unless Luke comes out in camp and it just sets it on fire and it's like no doubt head and shoulders above everybody else. And, he takes every meaningful snap in those 2 games and we see what happens in Athens. But just me kind of speculating here, I wouldn't be surprised if they do try to maybe see more than one quarterback get some snaps in those 2 games when they're still kind of in hand and haven't been decided yet. I don't know. I would think that they would probably, it might just be in their best interest to kind of see what they've got from more than just one guy. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. It may not. But I think it's nice to have that luxury.
I think you bring up a really interesting point there. I think Darren might have brought this up a couple of months ago too. I think that's a really fascinating point because you basically have 8 quarters before you got to go see the dogs over there in Athens. They weren't barking 2 years ago, but they might be barking this year. That's for damn sure. And it's almost like, okay, we feel really good about where we are with Luke Doty right now being QB1. Like nobody has even really approached him in the summer. If that holds par in fall practice, if you want to call it that in Columbia, still 100 degrees. Luke Doty's going to be our guy, and we're going to run with him. But at the same time, if something happens to Luke Doty, you have nobody who has any experience, zero. But then you're also like, okay, but we also need to have this guy like ready to go because the SEC season starts in Athens in week 3. So, you've got a guy who's never been in charge of an SEC offense, and Marcus Satterfield. I know he's got a lot of experience. He's been around. He's been a head coach and all those type of things. And Shane's been around the block. There's plenty of guys in there who know what the hell they're doing. But it'll just be really interesting to see how they handle that scenario specifically with what comes after the trip to ECU.
Yeah, and part of what plays into my kind of line of thought there is that Luke has a different skill set as far as what he can do athletically to Jason Brown and Colton Gauthier. They're different styles of quarterbacks. So, I'm not sitting here trying to advocate for a 2 QB system every other play, Steve Spurrier type of deal. But, if you've got a couple of different types of skill sets, maybe it's a good thing to one day at some point in the season when you can rely on more than one guy to do something for you. Obviously you want to have one guy and just roll with him and that's how it goes. But I don't know that necessarily you can count on that at this point in the process with any of those quarterbacks. So that's sort of my, I guess, logic in that whole thing.
Should be getting a practice schedule, by the way, within about a week, just so everybody knows. So Shane's going to try to open up practice this year to some fans for those who want to try to get over there.
Oh, yeah, because that's what we need for more of this quarterback debate.
Paint your face.
That's all you're going to hear. I was watching the quarterbacks for 3 days.
Oh, God, I know. That's a great point. Yeah, wait, he shouldn't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. So, without breaking any NCAA, what's left of them, rules yesterday, Hale, Shane pretty much made a recruiting pitch for Oscar Delp. What'd you make of that?
I thought it was interesting, and as soon as he started talking about it, I knew exactly where he was going with it, and I don't think it took a rocket scientist to figure it out because everybody else sort of hopped on board with it, and yeah, I think it's a pretty loud and clear message from Shane, and obviously Delp is their priority at that position. It's not one of their top priorities across the entire class, and they aren't really recruiting any other tight end in 22.
No.
I think it all kind of plays into the, hey, you are our guy. Here, let us prove it to you. So it sort of kind of adds to that laundry list of things that they're trying to sell to this guy to convince him that he should sign with South Carolina over Georgia, Clemson, or Alabama, or whoever else is, one of those big boys in college football.
The final couple minutes here. I know that you're not in Hoover for the remainder of media days, but Coach O, Dan Mullen both spoke yesterday. Anything of note that came out of either one of those gentlemen and their appearance on the podium at the Winfrey? I think Coach O's had a lot of eyes on him. I think there are some people that are really intrigued and interested to see what the future of the LSU football program looks like. I want to remind everybody they're about a year and a half removed from winning a national championship, but yet somehow Coach O might be in danger of not being there anymore or something. But what did you take from both of those appearances, or maybe something somebody else had to say, like Greg Sankey? Greg Sankey, by the way, he's not mincing words. He's not really beating around the bush anymore. I don't think he's happy with the NCAA.
Yeah, no, honestly, I didn't pay a ton of attention to what either of the other two coaches said. I did ask in one of the other rooms, I asked Dan Mullen if he and Shane Beamer knew each other. And interestingly enough, they do know each other, and I think kind of fairly well. They both have places they go vacation at in Lake Oconee in Georgia, and Dan Mullen was talking about how Beamer was over hanging out at a swimming pool a couple of weeks ago. So I thought that was kind of interesting that they have sort of a relationship that way. But yeah, to your point, Sankey was pretty pointed in some of the stuff he said, whether it was directed towards the NCAA and all that NIL stuff, or with the vaccinations and sort of where things are at with that. He was flexing. He was flexing, that's for sure.
Why do you think he's doing that now? What was the point of that? Because he's never done this before.
Well, I mean, I think he's probably feeling like he's got a lot of momentum from some of the stuff he helped lead the charge on last year when it came to actually having a season. So, I guess you could say he's kind of striking while the iron's hot. Maybe he sees a bigger role for him down the road, maybe with college athletics or college football. And I heard on one of the XM shows somebody suggesting maybe he could be the college football czar one day. So maybe he has his eyes on that type of position. I do think that he should be commended for some of the stuff that he was willing to do last year and to say and move forward with. And I think that I think that just kind of was part of his line of thinking there and saying some of those things and trying to be sort of that authoritarian, so to speak.
Well, I mean, look, if we rewind the clock here, guys, I mean, we all were covering this last year. We remember what was happening. They were dropping like flies, the leagues who were, bowing out of football season. You had the NCAA was a mess. And the one steady hand, look, Bob Bowlesby, I thought, did a really good job. I thought the ACC did a really good job as well. But wasn't kind of all our understanding that everybody was taking their cues from the SEC? Like, if the SEC shut it down, it was over, right? I mean, and I don't know that anybody kind of stepped up and said that, but it was kind of all understood. Like, John Swofford and Bob Bowlesby, as great of men as they are, and I think they did a really great job. Can't say that for Darren's Big Ten. but it was like, hey, let's keep our eyes on the SEC. If they shut it down, it's over. And he never really tipped his hand. He just kind of kept guiding the ship towards shore, and then it ended up going off, not without a hitch. They had problems, but I think it was that steady hand, Hale, that led college football back and kind of kept it going, and we eventually crowned a national champion, of course, from the Southeastern Conference. So yeah, I mean, maybe there's a part of him that says, hey, look, I made this happen last year. And we need more change. I'm gonna make it happen again.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of been the issue among many with college football, is that there's not really that one person at the top of the ladder that has that voice or has it. Like the structure is such that it's hard to have that. And if this is his way of trying to make that push, that's awesome, because it's definitely needed. It's now more than ever with all that's going on just across the board with the landscape of the sport and college athletics in general. So, I think that's to be commended. And if he's willing to step up and try to be that guy, then awesome. I think there's a strong case there for him to take that on.
Well, we'll let you get back on the road. We know you got to get to Columbia. That Sherbert guy, sometimes he overworks y'all. I'll have a talk with him about that.
He's not in Columbia either.
I know.
Yeah.
He just lives up there in Chicago and eats his beef sandwiches and plays with his damn turtles and dogs and stuff. Guy, I don't know who he thinks he is, but great stuff, man. Really wonderful coverage. You and John Del Bianco have, as always, done a tremendous job. We certainly appreciate that. Darren and I this morning were on thebigspur.com stealing all of your information to regurgitate as our own without crediting the source. So just kind of want to pass that along to you. I'm just kidding. We didn't do that, but but we certainly appreciate it. Safe travels home. And guess what, brother? We're just a few weeks away from football, so we'll certainly talk to you here soon as we get closer.
Music to my ears. I appreciate it, fellas. Y'all be good.
Always. There you go. Hale McGranahan, thebigspur.com. They got a bunch of stuff up, and I know that when they get home, there's going to be a lot more coming. If you're fired up and ready for football, you might want to check it out, thebigspur.com. I think it's still like $1 to join or something for like 90 days or something ridiculous.
Jump on it now. You'll take everything right up to, and then, God, if it's 90 days, the start of getting through half the football season.
Yeah, that's right. I agree. Tyler says we should all chip in and get Hale some oven mitts, I'm assuming for a wedding gift. Yeah.
I'll say this, and my guess is he has absolutely nothing to do with it. But the website I stumbled on, there are some very nice pictures. So they had a very nice, what appeared photo shoot, and I think it was in Columbia, in an older downtown-ish area. There were some of it maybe had me thinking some of it was in Charleston too. Couldn't exactly tell, but very, very good looking pictures.
I'll have to check that out. Okay. We got to hit a timeout. When we return, we do have some baseball and some Olympics notes to quickly pass along to you. South Carolina has completed their staff as well in Columbia. We've got an MLB note to get across, and then we'll get right back into football. Gene Sapakoff is standing right beside Dabo Sweeney right now as Dabo is meeting with the media in Clemson. So we'll have a full report from Gene ahead at 1:30. But Gene also will have plenty on the SEC as well. Hang tight. The JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen. We'll be right back.
Mike Morgan here for Gamecock Traditions. Baseball is going strong. You'll want to look sharp when you cheer on your Gamecocks. Under Armour, New Era, sideline hats, all with interlocking SC Baseball logo. 18 styles of $10 tees exclusively at Gamecock Traditions. Get on that email list by going to the bottom of the page, enter your email, and always be the first to know about new items as they arrive. You can also add a little Gamecock flair with house signs, garden flags, interior and yard decorations, only at one place, Gamecock Traditions.
At Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, families walk in the footsteps of our nation's heroes, the brave ones who risked their lives to defend our way of life. Home to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, and the USS Clamagore, there's more than 1 million square feet of exhibit space to roam. White Glove certified, we have several new health safety measures in place to enhance the visitor experience. Come for the day and leave feeling inspired. One of the most impressive museums in the country, located right here in Mount Pleasant. Visit patriotspoint.org for more. We'll see you soon.
Bourbon and whiskey drinkers of Charleston, Paddock and Whiskey on James Island and the Terrace Shopping Center on Maybank is your home for the finest and rarest bourbon and whiskey drinks in the Low Country. This is where I hang out. Go meet my friends Reed and Chris and try one of their exclusive barrel pick bourbons. They have the largest private barrel collection in the state, and let their knowledgeable staff recommend your next pour. PaddockandWhiskey.com. Let not your heart be troubled. Paddock and Whiskey is here for your next double. We're all friends around here. Paddock and Whiskey, proud partners of the JB and Goldwater Show.
This is Scott Glaze, head golf professional at the Links at Stono Ferry, located on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm inviting you to tee it up on one of the most scenic and challenging courses in the Low Country. Our back nine is highlighted with 3 holes that border the Intercoastal Waterway. Visit stonoferrygolf.com to book tee times and discover all that Stono Ferry has to offer. The Links at Stono Ferry is a former South Carolina Golf Course of the Year and is also home to the College of Charleston men's and women's golf teams. Come see us. We would love to have you. stonoferrygolf.com.
Hi, I'm Chris Half, Public Information Officer at the Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum. We're home of the mighty USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, Clamagore, and Vietnam experience. And we're a proud partner of the JB and Goldwater Show. We invite you and your family to come see us and enjoy a day on Charleston Harbor. Visit patriotspoint.org for more information. And now, it is my honor to present the national anthem.
JB Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online.
Final hour, Tuesday afternoon, the JB and Goldwater show driven by Stokes Volkswagen. Welcome back, JB and Darren. Make sure you follow us across all social media platforms at JB and Goldwater, individually at Sports Media JB and at Darren Goldwater. Send us a message if you'd like John and Tyler and Craig and many, many more of you have done today, and we'll pop it up into our program and make you a part of it, like Gene Sapakoff will be at 1:30, and like Hale McGranahan just was. All right, let's pass along just a couple of notes here, and then we'll kind of jump back into some football. Remember, the Olympics starts this week. It actually starts tomorrow. You got soccer and softball on the agenda tomorrow. So soccer and softball play tomorrow and Thursday, and then I think there's only maybe one event Friday. No, there's archery.
Opening ceremonies are Friday.
Really?
I didn't realize soccer and softball started today until I started making this graphic. I was like, oh, how about that? I saw something from Jess Mendoza, who was at the Olympic softball field. But yeah, opening ceremonies are Friday. There'll be coverage all over the place. Just Google it. It's on Peacock. It's on NBC. It's everywhere.
Yeah, and Michael Phelps is the correspondent this year for swimming, which will be wonderful. The greatest swimmer we've ever seen. Will be on coverage with Dan Hicks and Rowdy Gaines. So that'll be neat. Really looking forward to that. By the way, the Olympic Committee still says that they could can this whole thing if COVID gets out of control over there. So we'll have to keep our eyes on it. I think how many athletes are positive right now, Darren? It's just a couple, right?
I'm not sure the number. The precautions are I mean, they're amazing. I do know somebody who is over there calling games. They're doing an international feed for women's basketball, women's 3-on-3. She's doing some softball too, actually. But she had to go by herself. She had to get out there significantly early. There is no availability to go anywhere and eat or socialize at all. You are hotel room, broadcast facility. Even though she's in Tokyo, she can't go to the actual facility of the games. There is a remote broadcast facility. So not all announcers will be on site. Some actually will be. A lot will be in Connecticut if you're watching on NBC. But the restrictions on athletes and everyone associated are tight, to say the very least.
Yeah, you almost wonder why. I mean, look, if I was selected for the Olympics in any sport, I would go because I would want to represent my country. But this is going to be. Let's just say it what it is. It's going to suck for a lot of people over there.
It's going to be the Olympics without fans, right? Swimming, a medal ceremony with no fans.
Are you kidding me? I know. That's my favorite of all Olympics. That's my favorite event is watching the swimmers. I think it's just awesome. It's just awesome.
I grew up as a swimmer, so I mean, I love watching the swimming.
Absolutely, I think it's awesome, man. Anybody that maybe disagrees, I certainly respect your opinion. I would also encourage you to YouTube. Maybe the 2008 relay race when Jason Lezak pulled it out at the end there. And if you've never really gotten into it, go watch that and tell me you can't get fired up for something like that. It was really, really – I remember that moment very well, by the way. I was about a half a bottle of bourbon deep in my house in college. But I saw it.
Well, I'm glad you remember it well because that's impressive.
I remember it. I don't remember what happened after that, but I remember it, certainly. All right, in baseball, Oakland is voting this morning about the future of the Oakland Athletics. Yeah, big vote. We'll see what happens as to whether the organization will stay there. 8 city council members casting non-binding votes for a proposed $12 billion development, which would include a ballpark in it, by the way. If the vote is affirmative, they just kind of stay on track. Doesn't mean that it's getting built or anything like that. If it's dissenting, it's probably squashed, and that means that they're going to start shopping this sucker around, and Oakland might be headed out of the West Coast. So we'll keep our eyes on that.
It's worth keeping an eye on because also just announced from a facility standpoint is a ridiculous new facility in Las Vegas. I don't know when they're breaking ground, but it was just announced that it's finalized. There's going to be a couple of hotels in it. Kind of think like the old school Sky Dome where there's a hotel and then you can watch the baseball while it's going on. There will be multiple hotels in this thing. There will be either a court or a field, like in the middle, probably a multi-use type facility. Obviously, gambling is going to be involved. The thing looks ridiculous. I put it out there on our social media account yesterday, but it looks ridiculous. But that's a destination possibility if Oakland is no longer Oakland.
Absolutely. Vegas is turning into, believe it or not, there's a lot to do out there. So, and they make money in Vegas. It's called gambling.
Speaking of, hypothetically speaking, of course, last night I decided, I'm going to get a little frisky here. So I decided to hypothetically say Juan Soto was going to hit a home run and have 6 total bases, and John Lester, who's been awful, will strike out at least 5, and the Nationals will win. Now, if the first 3 were true, I was pretty comfortable that the 4th would also be true. 15-1 odds, hypothetically. It all came true by like the 4th inning. And then they won.
So you're a winner?
Hypothetically, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Yes,
You're always a winner in my book.
That's right. Got a lot of M&Ms yesterday.
Maybe number 99 in your program, number 1 in your heart, that type of thing. Hope that makes you feel better.
Yep. A lot of M&Ms.
Congratulations to the
Thank you.
4 innings of proud baseball, the Nationals.
Yes.
Speaking of baseball, South Carolina has completed their coaching staff. Chad Calais, of course, has already been hired and not officially announced by the school, but he has been hired by Mark Kingston to replace Trip Couch, who left for Arizona. Skylar Meade, of course, now the head coach. Troy, it looks like a replacement is in place for him, as well as Justin Parker, who is coming from Indiana, and he is pretty good. Justin Parker put together a 3rd-ranked staff in the country last year in ERA. He also has been with the program for 3 years. Indiana, of course, won the Big Ten regular season championship in 2019. That was his first year with the program, and he helped lead the team to 3 top 10 wins in 15 games last year in 2020. He's been around a while. He's got a lot of big-time draft picks. This year, Indiana went 26-18. The staff's earned run average, how about this, Darren? 3.17, and they had 462 combined strikeouts and 383 innings. So pretty good stuff. He has also spent time at Central Florida, and it looks like Mark Kingston has found his replacement for Skylar Meade. We're going to have more on this a little bit later in the week once things become official up there in Columbia. But the Gamecock staff appears now to be complete with a couple of guys who have spent extensive time with successful in big-time baseball programs. Indiana certainly developed into that under Chris Lemonis, who just won a national championship at Mississippi State. And Chad Calais had been at Southern Miss. He actually went to Omaha with them, I think, way back in 2009 before moving to Texas A&M. So experience in the SEC there. So alongside Mike Current and, of course, Stuart Lake, the staff in Columbia is now complete. But again, more on that a little bit later in the week.
It's interesting for 2 reasons. Number one, you took it right out of my mouth. I mean, Indiana has been the successful Big Ten program the last few years. And the only reason he's only been at Indiana
in Michigan, though, they played for the national championship.
They did, 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Yeah, 2019.
The only reason he's been there for 2-3 years is because that's when Lemonis left. Lemonis got him back in a good spot, and he went to Mississippi State. But more interesting, we talked about, will the hires be Gamecock related? Will they be Gamecock family? Or, as you heard a lot with like the North Carolina and Duke basketball searches, in the family or outside of the family? Both of these hires are outside of the family that Kingston has brought in.
Yeah, and so was Mark, and so was Hale. Hey, look, so was Ray Tanner at one time, but he coveted this job.
It's not a good or a bad thing. It's just, it's just worth pointing out because there were Gamecock names.
That's right.
Mentioned for these positions, and that's not the way Kingston went.
That's right. Yeah, he went with, from what I understand, sensational coaches. I'm really looking forward to getting to know these guys, and South Carolina should be in pretty good hands. They've got an elite recruiting class coming in, so they've got dudes, and we'll see how it kind of all unfolds. But more on that again a little bit later in the week. Again, Gene Sapakoff coming up at 1:30. All right, before we get into some comments from Dan Mullen yesterday pertaining to the league and the way that it schedules itself, the Southeastern Conference, of course, is what I'm referencing here. I do want to pass on a couple of interesting NIL notes. We actually had somebody just commented probably 10. There it is. Swamp Fox about 10 minutes or so ago sent us a little note. I've kind of seen a couple of things out there. I do not know any details on this, but apparently Bryce Young, the quarterback at Alabama, may soon be carrying a fairly heavy checkbook around with him, if you want to call it that, bank account. Maybe close to $1 million in name, image, and likeness deals on the table for Bryce Young as quarterback at Alabama. I would probably venture a guess that there's something nationally related to that, if that is true, Darren.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to kind of see how that works out for him. But that would be the probably the biggest deal we've heard, I'm sure.
Well, at least a big time deal. Master P, is it Master P, the rapper? I believe so. Whose son has a $2 million deal at one of the HBCUs. So this would be the biggest of the brand names, I guess. So far that we've heard. There have been some pretty heavy rumors. DJ Uiagalelei is not far behind, but I haven't seen anything of that significance. I'd encourage anyone, really. There's an article in The Athletic. 6 or 7 quarterbacks who were part of the Peyton Manning Academy. They are counselors down there every year. They were interviewed about their take on NIL and how they're approaching it. It's not just no-name guys, right? Pittsburgh's quarterback, Penn State's quarterback, Matt Corral.
That Pittsburgh story is great, by the way.
Yep. But it's interesting how they're all approaching it differently. West Virginia's quarterback is in that as well. West Virginia's Neil Brown, who was mentioned briefly as a potential candidate for South Carolina. Every Friday, he's got someone coming in and speaking to that team on various, let's call it business type ideas, not just ideas, but how to manage their money, coaching them up, really. Yeah. It was interesting to see the different team structures, the different mentalities for Power 5 quarterbacks who can certainly profit, how they plan to go about that, and if it's now, if it's later, if it's the focus. It's a very interesting article. It's not just jump for the money now. That was the overall feel I got from the article.
Well, Jordan Davis is taking that approach. Big time defensive tackle at Georgia has shut down all of his social media accounts. Says, I don't want anything to do with name, image, and likeness. He's a future first round draft pick. I don't know if anybody saw the video of him this morning on set with Jordan Rogers and that group from the SEC network. This is a large man, maybe the largest man ever. Actually, I mean, he is enormous. He's like 6'7", like 360 pounds or something. I mean, it's something ridiculous, but it's not just big old fat kid. It's, I'm just going to move you around wherever I feel like moving you type kid, defensive tackle in the SEC. He says name, image, and likeness is not for him. He doesn't want to be a part of it. He says he hasn't done anything to deserve it or earn it. So he has shut down his social media. I think he still does have a Twitter account, but he doesn't use it. Everything else has been shut down, and he has shut out name, image, and likeness deals from his life, and he's looking forward to the NFL draft next year. But he's certainly, most importantly, as he says, looking forward to playing football for Georgia and trying to win a national championship, and then the money will be there on the other side. So, I'm sure he's not the only one out there, but all we have really heard about are the deals that are being signed by the players, which is rightfully so. That's kind of the way it works. But there are guys out there and big ones like Jordan Davis who say, thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, I don't remember which quarterback it was from that article I was just talking about who said the same thing. The money will be there. The consistency amongst all the quarterbacks in that article, some form or fashion of football is first. We need to manage this some way, somehow, and there are varying some ways and somehows of how they'll manage and filter through NIL possibilities. But always, across the board right there was football's first. This stuff is fine as long as it doesn't get in the way. And it was a very measured approach from these guys. It was refreshing, really, because most of the coverage has been, like you said, NIL's available and here's who's getting paid. But it's not everyone just jumping at these deals.
No, it's not. And Jordan Davis is a guy, I mean, he's not going to overtake a major quarterback deal like we mentioned maybe with Bryce Young. But, I mean, he might be the best defensive tackle in the country over at Georgia. So, I mean, you'd like to think that there's like I'm probably going to offend somebody by saying this, but I think we all know what image I'm trying to create here. We've all known for years these offensive linemen like to get out and go to these steakhouses and these buffets and things like that. Like, Like wouldn't a Golden Corral be like, man, you'd fit right in around here. You know what I mean? Like that type thing.
Someone did it. There's a quarterback. I wish it was top of mind.
That's what I was talking about. The Pittsburgh quarterback.
Yeah, okay, right. Who's buying hot dogs, I think, for his offensive line after every game or something?
It's the steaks at a steakhouse up there in Pennsylvania.
Okay, maybe I heard of another one because another one I saw was like hot dogs.
Oh, okay. Well, that might be.
Because I remembered it thinking hot dogs? Like it looks like a better place than that.
Yeah, dude, this place was like a 5-star steakhouse in Pittsburgh. And he gets a deal, and then he also gets to take his offensive line in after every game to eat.
Maybe that's what it is. I'll check it out right now.
It's pretty. By the way, Darren, I meant to tell you this off the top of the show, so I'm sorry. It is National Pennsylvania Day, my friend. So congratulations.
Right on. And no, I am not from Pennsylvania. For all of you who still think I'm from Pennsylvania, because I went to Penn State, I'm not. But that's fine.
Yeah,
anyway,
I get it. Sorry. You just went to Penn State.
That's right.
All right. Again, we've got Gene coming up. Some interesting nuggets from Dabo Sweeney that we'll get to here in a minute. But one of those is that Dabo says his players are not for a 12-team playoff. Got bad news for him. It doesn't matter what they think, but we'll ask Gene why that is. I might have a little bit of a theory on that one. But before we get there, I do want to go back to some comments at Media Days yesterday from Dan Mullen, Darren, and I think that right now we're still in the middle of SEC Media Days and ACC's coming up. So starting pretty much next week when we have this other little lull of a couple of weeks before preseason practice starts to kind of get going around the country, we will have, I'm sure, more conversations pop up across college football about things like this. One of them, didn't they say that last year about Georgia? Yeah, he did say that. So yeah, maybe he's got a little Spurrier in him this year. But as it pertains actually strictly to the sport, Dan Mullen at Florida said he'd like to, because Bama's coming to the Swamp this year, do away with crossover games. Josh Heupel at Tennessee today was asked about it. And he said the Tennessee-Alabama series is a great series, and all the fans love it. Tennessee hadn't beat them in about 15 years. So I don't know how much they love it. They probably love it a little bit more if they mix in a win or two here and there. But, yes, for the pageantry and tradition of the sport, that matters, Darren. I think most importantly, and I don't want to offend a Vols fan or a Bama fans. I'm not either. And so, my comments here might be a little bit off base. But I think that the one rivalry that I think would be most deserving of being kept to get the pairing kept together is Auburn and Georgia, the Deep South's oldest rivalry as we know it to be, and those teams are generally a little bit more competitive in their ball games than Tennessee and Bama have been over the last 15 years or so. But there's another way to look at this. Just go to 9 games. Just go to 9. Keep them. Who cares? Then you can at least move the carousel with those other 2 games. But if they don't, look, I'm one of those guys. I don't have a rivalry to preserve on the other side of the aisle, and I don't know that LSU and Florida care enough to keep theirs. I mean, I think they like it, and I know there's some bitter hate there. But I don't know if they didn't play each other every year that they would necessarily care about that. If you rotated 2 every single year, you're going to see them enough anyways.
It's going to be on the table soon. I think it was going to be sooner had COVID not hit, and then trying to recover from all of that. Just figuring out some scheduling issues. And it's interesting that this is coming up today. Obviously, it was said yesterday, it was mentioned. It's always kind of a topic. There are teams like Tennessee that like the guaranteed cross-division games. And if I'm a Tennessee fan, I don't care if they're beating my brains in. If I'm going to have a guaranteed game, I'd rather it be against the team I know is going to be good than say, all right, like, we got Mississippi State on the schedule this year. Like that doesn't do it for me as much as we got a shot to beat Alabama. So there are teams that love it. I was interested to read that a lot of I have assumed not all wouldn't be in favor of a 9-team playoff, but it doesn't sound like there's much favor, at least
in the schedule,
much at all. No, in all, or not all, but a 9-game SEC schedule doesn't sound like the coaches want that at all. I don't think that's while it's championed by you often, I don't know how realistic that even is. If the coaches aren't on board and they're saying, man, it's tough enough, I don't know how realistic that is at all.
I don't think it's realistic until there's real change in football. If they break away and do something like that, then if you ever restructure it where you have, what do we want to call it, a czar or a commissioner or president, whatever you want to call it, then you're going to have some type of uniformity in a lot of different ways that we don't have now, which would probably include conference scheduling. You might even include some type of realignment or something like that. So yeah, you're right. I mean, I'm a big fan of it. Nick Saban is. He said, let's play as many SEC games as we can. He's definitely in the minority there because he's got a team that can win all those games. I would, as far as doing away with, so there are groups of fan bases that don't care about him. I think South Carolina is probably in that. Even if it was the other way around, like for instance, if the Gamecocks were beating Texas A&M every single year, and it just wasn't even close, I still think most fans would say, we'd really like playing A&M. For those who've been to College Station, it's a really great trip. Don't care enough to go out there every 2 years. Don't care enough to have them in our house every 2 years, but love playing them, respect them. But let's mix in a water here and there. I mean, let's get somebody new. And I think the large majority of teams in this league probably feel that way. But I mentioned, Alabama beats Tennessee's brains in every year. All right, let me say it this way. If Clemson beat Carolina 15 years in a row, you know how bad that would hurt Gamecock fans? Holy cow, you better close bridges. I mean, I'm telling you, seriously, you better close bridges.
Aren't we approaching halfway to 15 right now?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, you better close bridges. You know what I mean? So, but here's the thing. Nobody would want to stop playing the series. Yeah, there's going to be a few here and there, forget it. It's not even a rivalry anymore, but it still is. You would still want to play it. Florida and Florida State would still want to play. Georgia and Georgia Tech still want to play because there's pageantry. It's tradition. It's history. Even if you suck, it's your job to get better, not their job to get worse. So I see both sides of it. I think the only way that you'll make people happy is by adding a game to the schedule, and then that brings up a whole different form of unhappiness. So
yeah, I mean, because any type of change, once you're talking about this, there will be there's history that you're going to start messing with. There's long running rivalries and pageantry and tradition that you're going to inevitably mess with once you go down this road. It's fine to go down that road if everyone can be somewhat on the same page. If there's a benefit for everyone involved, or at least enough of a majority involved, then that history stays back there. You remember it. You try and get those games on the schedule every now and then. And at the end of the day, it's not as big of a deal as, oh my God, Tennessee, we're not playing Alabama every single year anymore. At the end of the day, that it'll pass. It subsides, just like everything does.
Well, I think, I just found, it's got somebody hit me up on Twitter here. It's one of our favorite folks. We need to have J.I. Gamecock 10 on sometime. Mr. Churchill, as we call him. He said, I actually think that about Missouri. I hate playing them every season, which I think there's a lot of people that feel that way. But by the way, that this series has actually generated some amazing moments in Carolina football history, like the Connor Shaw game back in 2013 and things like that. But to his point, and it's not just exclusive to South Carolina here, what we used to know about leagues across the country and how regional they are it's not the case anymore. I mean, you look like this year, Carolina goes to East Carolina, but that's rare. So outside of that, if you want to go to a road game, okay, you can go to Athens, you can go to Knoxville. Those are pretty close trips. They're great. Knoxville is a great trip. Athens sucks. But Knoxville is a great trip to go to. But the other two, you have to travel to College Station, Texas, or Columbia, Missouri. And you think about, all right, well, that stinks. Well, think about the ACC. I mean, think about Miami fans. Look where they have to go. My God, man. They got to go to like Boston College and Syracuse every year.
There's nothing close to Miami. I mean, some of the schools in Florida, but that Miami's about as far down as you can get.
Yeah. I mean, and look, Miami fans they'll travel to North Carolina. There's plenty of teams in North Carolina and Virginia and stuff like that. But hell, I don't know. It might be easier to fly to Boston than it is to drive up to Chapel Hill and cheaper. I don't know. But, we have gotten away from that, and it's not going to get any better. Travel doesn't matter anymore. TV matters. TV dollars matter. That's all that they care about. It's not the what's best for the fans anymore. I wish it was, but it's not. And so it's going to continue to be this way. But as far as if you put me in the category of eliminate the crossover games, I'd rather see a rotating schedule of Western opponents, honestly. Absolutely. And the schedule gets stale, guys. I mean, let's be honest. There's only one thing that changes on the schedule every year in the league for each of these teams. I think it's ludicrous.
I've said many times, for a 9-game SEC slate, I'm not in favor of. But changing this, I am, because it only makes sense. The Big Ten has to deal with it too, with some of these cross-division games. It's just, I would rather things stay more fresh, however more fresh they can actually be, than at least run the risk of getting stale. And that's what happens. I mean, it's inevitable. It gets stale. And if you're a franchise team, whatever you want to call it, that doesn't have a built-in rivalry or tradition game like LSU, Florida, like Alabama, Tennessee, then it doesn't matter. Then it benefits you, right? The only people it really benefits to keep it the way it is are the people that have those games. And eventually they'll probably lose out.
Power brokers in the SEC they've run it for a long time. We all know that, Bama and Tennessee and Georgia and Auburn. The good old boy system is alive. It's not probably going away anytime soon unless, again, major change comes, which probably will one day. But these guys, they've gotten what they wanted for a long time. I think we all understand. I'm not like, beating them up on it or anything like that. I'll be honest with you. If South Carolina had that type of power, I wish they'd flex their muscle too.
Right.
But these programs for a long time have said, no, you're not going to do that. And everybody said, well, okay, then we won't. That's the way it goes. All right. Real quick, in the Sun Belt, coaches have selected Coastal Carolina to win the East with App State, a tie in first, but not in the West. Louisiana, the clear favorite to win it over there. By the way, Louisiana also has 9 first-place votes to win the entire league. That is 3 better than that of Coastal in the East. So could be another fun year in the Fun Belt Conference. All right, you mentioned the word stale. Not at DB's. It's never stale. The bread is real nice, Clark. DB'scheesesteaks.com for their entire menu. Don't forget to order the boardwalk fries with anything that you order at DB's. Also available on every delivery app out there. DB'scheesesteaks.com. When we return, Dabo Swinney said just a little while ago, the media twisted his words. He never said he didn't want NIL deals. He just said, when we're paying players, I'm out.
The media didn't twist that. Everyone's been honest. You said one thing about this, but you were fine with that. So fine, create your own headlines.
Gene Sapakoff says he's got a column coming on that. We know where Gene's going next, right here on the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen.
This is Mike Mazzell for Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road with exciting news. It's springtime and we're playing ball. Most dealerships don't have any inventory, but at Stokes Volkswagen we do. So we're playing ball on every new Volkswagen in stock. Every new Volkswagen available with 0 down. Qualified buyers can sign and drive with interest-free financing for 60 months. Remember, Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road is the fastest, easiest way to sell your car and get the most money for your trade. Plus, we'll take any trade in any condition, paid off or not. Is your credit in a slump?
Strike 2.
If you've got $500 down and you make at least $2,000 per month, our lenders can get you approved. So if you want to strike out, that's okay. But if you want to hit a home run and save on a new Volkswagen, come to us today at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road or StokesVW.com.
$1,666 per month per $1,000 borrowed for 60 months at 0% APR with 0 down. Plus tax. Includes $499.50 administration fee. Subject to VCI credit approval. Expires month end.
Peace and love at Stokes Speed Up.
Wando Power Equipment, the trusted home of Hustler zero-turn residential and commercial mowers. There is nobody more trusted in South Carolina than our friends from Wando Power Equipment. They've been providing elite commercial and residential service for over 30 years. Landscape Services have turned to their selection of Hustler zero-turn mowers like the Raptor. Bigger, stronger, faster, and the most durable Raptor Hustler has ever designed. Located on Daniel Island and online at wandopower.com. Wando Power Equipment, owned by the Price family, the home of Hustler zero-turn mowers, rentals, service, and specializing in family and friendship.
Shrimping season's back. That means local caught shrimp. That's right, local caught shrimp back on the menu at the Dog and Duck. All 3 locations, Bell Hall, Park West, and Clements Ferry Road, now featuring once again local caught hand-breaded shrimp, plus other daily specials like the Game Day Burger every Wednesday, Rib Night on Friday, rotating taps all the time, and all the TVs you can possibly imagine for whatever you want to watch. The Dog and Duck in Bell Hall, Park West, and on Clements Ferry Road. Okay, what's going on today, huh? Anything to talk about?
All right, greetings and a good Monday afternoon. Greetings and a good Tuesday afternoon. Greetings and a good Wednesday afternoon, and welcome aboard. All right, greetings and a good Thursday afternoon. Greetings and a good Friday afternoon, and welcome aboard. Yeah, well, Gene Sapakoff is always working. We're going to get right to him. He is in Clemson, South Carolina for the Tigers Media Day. Gene, do you have Dabo on the phone with you?
Just about. He is standing pretty close, but I've just stepped outside now, so I'm not sure I can get him on the phone.
That's okay. Because see, Gene, you're spoiling our plan. We said we wanted to talk to you, hoping you'd be near Dabo, and then just hand him the phone.
I could probably arrange that. It'd be a little tricky. Here's what I think you should actually do, though. You call me when I'm standing next to Dabo, and then you call David Cloninger when he's standing next to Shane Beamer, and we then somehow put the phones together, and Beamer and Dabo could talk. What do you think?
Oh, marvelous. I'm in. So, if we can make it happen, I'm in.
You guys,
it's that time of year.
That's right. Talking season. What's the latest, Gene?
Well, here's the latest. Just like baseball spring training, everybody thinks they've got a great team. Everything is bubbly and enthusiastic from pretty much Pullman, Washington to Coral Gables, Florida. That's pretty much the news. I guess a few teams might have some injuries here and there, but I know from listening to every word Shane Beamer said yesterday and listening to Dabo today, and Dabo going to take the podium at the ACC thing in Charlotte on Friday. The big news is that there's no big news, no major injuries, no major transfers, no major disciplinary issues on either of these teams, or at least not that they're going to make public. And that's what you want this time of year.
Gene, a couple of questions asked to Dabo today. One of them about name, image, and likeness. Catch us up on what's happened here. He says the media twisted his words.
Yeah, well, that was in 2014, and I was there, and the subject then was unions and players getting paid and stuff like that. And so Dabo would like to dice up his philosophy on whether or not schools should openly pay players versus players making money off their name, image, and likeness. And those indeed are two different things. And he says not only is he fully in favor of name, image, and likeness, but he would like to see that expanded to where he didn't elaborate, but where players could actually do even better with that than most current legislation. And he doubled down on that he does not want schools paying players. So, that's where that is. He makes a fairly clear differentiation between name, image, and likeness and outright employment of players. And I guess, you have to kind of take him at his word there. But the problem with Dabo, with regard to most people who, write about things like that, is that he's got a 10-year contract for $93 million. That's the thing where some people think he's not exactly in line with American capitalism. But yeah, he knows that people are going to take shots at him, and I think he's big enough to handle it at this point.
I don't think he cares, to be honest with you. When you got about $90 million in your bank account, there's not a lot that should be able to rattle you. Although Dabo will certainly hold his ground. One of the other questions that came up today was about the playoff and its potential expansion to 12 teams. He says he's talked to his guys and they don't want to see that. Gene, is that Dabo Swinney trying to protect Clemson from any other ACC suitors and what would be an expanded college football playoff?
Interesting, Jamie. I'm the guy that asked him about that, and I've addressed that before. And I know Dabo always argued for the 4-team playoff, and that was usually when there was talk about moving it to 6 or 8. So I wasn't surprised today when he said he didn't like the 12. A couple things. What did surprise me is that he said he'd rather have it go back to just 2 teams, like the old BCS systems, basically because he likes the preservation of the old bowl system where there were a lot more bowl games that meant something. And, he said he doesn't like the 12. I would argue that right now with Clemson hot, and they still are with DJ Uiagalelei, but, there's going to be some years coming up here when they don't have the great quarterback and when they don't make the 4-team playoff and when Clemson fans would be really glad of a 12-team playoff. But the thing is, that I don't think Dabo fully appreciates because he's just kind of got the orange-colored glasses on right now. The main reason that the managers of, the conferences and the commissioners and so forth and the presidents want the 12-team playoff is all these opt-outs in these non-playoff bowl games are making some of these things really unwatchable and just messy and not fun for coaches and fans of schools where there's just so many opt-outs in these bowl games. And so, I don't know, maybe they ought to expand it to like a 64-team playoff if you really want to prevent that.
On Twitter at Sapakoff, Gene Sapakoff. Well, Gene, yeah, I mean, and that's true. And then there's, you have the crowd out there that said, and this is where I stand on it, that there isn't parity in college football. There's an elite group, and Clemson is certainly in that. And then there's everybody else. And when you're in this era now where kids can move around freely, they can transfer wherever they want to. They have these name, image, and likeness deals. The sport has catered itself much more to the player, I'd say specifically over the last year, and that's where it's headed. Guys, unlike professional sports, they don't have contracts that keep them in certain places. You just go.
Well, I know where he was going with that, Gene, right? You don't have the contracts that you have there in the professional sports. But I mean, is more of this, I don't want to say twisted around, but in some ways, Dabo, I talked about how Beamer has controlled his message. This feels like Dabo trying to just double down on something he was saying before, only to control his message somehow now, like trying to write headlines that don't necessarily need to be written. Am I getting that right sense?
I kind of see where you're going with that, Darren, and I think you're right. And I think another layer here, Darren, is that, when Dabo talks these days, he's not really just some college football coach talking. Mm-hmm. He's become not the spokesperson for college football because there's certainly still Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher and, Mac Brown and some others. But he's becoming the spokesperson for ACC athletics as Roy Williams has retired, as Coach Krzyzewski is, going to retire after next year. Dabo Swinney is the coach, the go-to guy, the guy on the podium to speak for college athletics on a lot of these issues. And I think he's starting to measure his words a little more carefully than maybe he would have in the past.
Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. What else, as it pertains to, to football, like the team and the players, how about an update on Justin Ross? Anything else that he has passed along today newsworthy with his players?
Yeah, Justin Ross definitely came up today, not just with Dabo, but with some of the assistant coaches. And the line from the company here is that they are near the finish line with Justin Ross, and they expect some good news in the next week or two, but they're not going to jump the gun, and they're not going to exactly say what the doctor's report has been. But the momentum certainly seems to be tilting, and what everybody is saying, from wide receivers coach Tyler Grisham, offense coordinator Tony Elliott, and Dabo today, that they expect good news on Justin Ross. And boy, what a plus that would be, because you're talking about an elite, first round talent prospect guy coming back that they did not have last year. And that's a heck of a boost at a position that, is good, but with Justin Ross is really good if he comes back as the Justin Ross that we knew that was torching Alabama in a national championship game.
If Justin Ross, which it appears he's going to be good to go, it might take him some time to kind of work back into it. But what does the rest of that group look like out there at wide receiver? According to, I saw Tyler Grisham also spoke earlier. So him and Coach Sweeney, what did they have to say about the rest of those guys?
I think they really like the progress of Frank Ladson and Joseph Nagata and a few of the other guys that they have. I think they think that they're going to be good. And, they're going to get this Will Taylor kid from Dutch Fork High School in Irmo that was a projected first-round pick in the baseball draft. He's the one of the three outstanding players. They're probably not going to get Bubba Chandler, and they're definitely not going to get Joe Mack coming to the baseball team. But Bubba Chandler and Will Taylor, we're going to both play football and baseball here. And, Will Taylor can be a slot receiver right away, who also could help out at quarterback, which, by the way, is still a very weak position overall, because the backup quarterback is absolutely, up for grabs, with walk-on Hunter Helms being the guy, at least until Tyson Pumajon comes back. And that's some other news today, that they said that they now think he will be able to be back in uniform and playing sometime during the season. Whereas after that spring practice game, the spring game injury, they thought maybe he'd be lost for all of 2021.
Wow. Well, Gene, we all know how uberly talented the Tigers are. There is no debating that, but you mentioned that they are thin at quarterback. If something does happen to DJ Uiagalelei, it's not that they don't have talent, but they're to continue to compete at the level that they want to compete at, which is the college football playoff. I don't know that the guys behind them are going to get them there, and I don't know that that's any different at running back. I talked to somebody up there who's directly involved in the program. He says, look, Lynn J. Dixon, we all know, is really good. They really like Kobe Pace, but you get banged up at running back, and this group just isn't as. DeMarcus Bowman left. He's at Florida now, and that was kind of their guy. So those two premier positions, they've been manned the last couple of years by Travis Etienne and Trevor Lawrence. They're gone. There's talent there, but they're also an injury away at both positions from maybe being in a little bit of trouble.
Well, let me address them separately here. The quarterback position, no doubt, is weaker at the backup spot than at any time since Clemson has been in the playoffs, which is, the last 6 years. There's no question. You've had Kelly Bryant or Chase Bryce or somebody like that, pretty good behind them. The year Kelly Bryant played in 2017, even Hunter Johnson was a better player than what they have, backing up DJ Uiagalelei now. That's going to be a problem if he gets hurt. There's just no way around that. It is. They could maybe get a couple of regular season games and get by, but this year in, again, the 4-team playoff, and there's going to be, I'll tell you what, Oklahoma, terrific, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, obviously. You can't lose more than one game or you're out of there. Running back, though, again, this kid coming from the Charlotte area, who, by the way, will play his first real college game in Charlotte against Georgia, Will Shipley.
Yeah.
I talked to C.J. Spiller today, the running backs coach, and Tony Elliott, the offensive coordinator, who had been the running backs coach until, this year when, Spiller comes in and takes over that position group, they expect so many good things from this guy, Will Shipley. And I do too. I think he's going to be really good. Now, he's a freshman. He's got to learn to pick up blocking schemes and catch footballs out of the backfield. But purely as a running back, I think he's going to be really good. Travis Etienne, good? No, not at first, not for sure. But I think he's going to be pretty good. And that as a group, the running back position will be okay.
And once again, I mean, when you get on that level, and we've seen it generally, if you're a middle of the pack type team in any of these leagues, and you feel like you're this thin, even with elite players at these positions, you can't overcome major injuries. But when you're Clemson and you recruit that talent every year, they have a better shot to do it than just about anybody else out there. So we'll certainly see. What about Xavier Thomas? I mean, what a strange ride it's been for this young man. A highly recruited kid. Last year, I don't know that I bought into everything they were saying about why he wasn't playing. He ultimately ended up coming back. What are their expectations for this young man?
I think they feel pretty good about him. That's what Dabo Sweeney just said. And even a stranger situation is Justin Foster, who, left the program in January and came back in May. I mean, so there's, two defensive linemen that are elite level guys. If they're going to be at full strength, they think they are, and they think they have ridiculous depth at the defensive line position and at all the positions along the defensive line. So I think they're going to be okay there. It's going to be interesting, Jamie, Darren, though. I mean, having to play Georgia right away with JT Daniels at quarterback, if Oklahoma runs the table in the Big 12, and I think Oklahoma might win the national championship, if Ohio State runs the table, and if Georgia and Alabama, get to the SEC championship game undefeated, which of course would mean Georgia beating Clemson, I don't think Clemson could afford another loss after losing to Georgia if they do, because that ACC schedule, at least on paper right now, and according to your guest from last week, Phil Steele, is just so ridiculously weak that I don't know after Georgia where you find teams to boost that record, and that loss would just hang over you. Now, usually what we expect to happen doesn't, and Oklahoma has 2 losses, or Ohio State gets beat by, Iowa State somewhere along the line, but I don't know. Or I should say Iowa, because Iowa State's obviously in the Big 12, but, I don't know. I'm just telling you that they really need to win that Georgia game with the schedule they have coming up.
It's interesting because Jamie asked Phil Steele that exact question. He said, how much would a loss impact Clemson? And he said not that much, because the assumption is that they're just going to go rolling on through the rest of their schedule. And if they don't lose again, they'll be fine. But you put that conversation with this one, and okay, you're confident about some guys, but what about the depth? And then what about the depth there? And the question marks. And it's very, at least plausible to think, what if something, we've seen a backup quarterback have to save the day for Clemson a couple of years now. So what if it happens and you lose to Georgia? And that's the scenario that you're putting on the table here right now.
Well, yeah, and those backup quarterbacks were Chase Bryce, who ended up starting at Duke and will start at App State this year, and then DJ Uiagalelei, who did not save the day at Notre Dame. They lost, but he did beat Boston College and is just a lot more talented. So I don't know. There's just so much football to be played. It's fun to be able to speculate and talk about it. Usually a whole bunch of undefeated teams don't end up in the playoff. But I'll tell you what, 2-loss teams sure don't end up in the playoff, not in a 14 scenario. Yep. So it's going to be fascinating. And we just go back to the ACC, and here comes the ACC football kickoff with, Wednesday and Thursday. But boy, does that conference badly need another contender or two to get up there and make it tough for Clemson. Will North Carolina, Miami, Florida State, somebody please step up?
Yeah, they need Miami and North Carolina. I think it would, Gene, I think if they drop that game to Georgia, I think it would just depend on what it looks like. I mean, if you go 11-1, what does that look like? Did you beat the brakes off of everybody and Georgia's just really good? And then you pounded North Carolina, a 10-2 North Carolina or Miami in the ACC championship game. We'll just have to wait and see. As you mentioned, there's not just a lot of football to be played. There's a whole season to be played. We haven't even gotten there. Give me a grade on Shane Beamer in Hoover.
Okay, Shane Beamer to me had a B in Hoover until he took, and I know you guys have talked about the Spurrier picture at the fast food place. Then A+. That was, I don't care if he planned that 3 months ago. That was beautiful, brilliant, hilarious. I loved it. As far as actually in Hoover, I think his message is, we're not surprised. We've been hearing it since he was hired, the enthusiasm for selling the program. But let's not forget, a lot of people in Hoover that cover all these other teams and cover the SEC nationally, they really don't know much about Shane Beamer. I mean, he's not even been a coordinator. So that's their introduction to him. And I think he did a heck of a job. A couple little nitpicky things. He said, something like, and you can go back and listen to the tape, but all these things I go to, everybody said there's never been this much excitement about the program. Well, Shane, I don't know. I was around when Steve Spurrier was going 11-2 3 years in a row. It was pretty exciting. When Brad Scott won a bowl game, when Lou Holtz won 2 games in Florida, I think I wasn't here, but when Joe Morrison was number 2 in the nation, you know, there was probably a lot of excitement. So that was a slight fudgy thing there. I don't know about that. And also, I don't know if you noticed, but 2 different times when the subject of this school here in Pickens County came up, he called our in-state rival. Please tell me he's not going to refuse to name Clemson anytime that comes up. That's the kind of thing coaches at Mississippi and Mississippi State do, refuse to name the other school in the rivalry. I just think that's kind of silly. But overall, because of that picture, A+.
Well, he pulled that page out of Spurrier's book, because it used to be those boys in the upstate under Coach Spurrier.
Yeah.
As you know.
Yeah, but Spurrier, as he started beating the pants off Clemson 5 years in a row, got real comfortable talking about Clemson. You know, if you're going to say that our in-state rival, and you're on the bad side of that, you know, competitive-wise, it doesn't sound too good. You can start messing around with them when you're beating them, but, you know, Spurrier knew when to needle somebody like Florida State or Clemson when he was on top of it, not when he was getting pounded by him.
That's true. That's true. That hasn't happened to Shane just yet. Remember, it's all a learning curve. For
everything's great right now.
Yeah, some of these new boys on the block. Gene, I'll say this. I think I'm with you. I think it was an A+, but here's why I think it was, because with Coach Muschamp, I mentioned this at the top of the program to Darren. You know, I've interacted with Coach Muschamp over the years. He was always super to me, Gene. Couldn't have been any kinder. Those who spent a lot of time with him actually behind the scenes were like, what you see on game day and what you see in front of the podium is not what you get when you're having a beer with the guy. He's a great dude. But with Shane Beamer, what you see at the podium is actually what you see when you're having a beer with the guy. I mean, you had a beer with him actually a few weeks ago. It's very refreshing, I think, for Carolina fans to know that the guy that's talking is the same guy that they're going to see in the grocery store.
That's a really terrific point. And there are coaches that are like that. I think Spurrier was like that. I think Dabo's like that. I think Shane Beamer is like that. Will Muschamp, not necessarily like that. For instance, Les Miles, absolutely not like that. Mm-hmm. I mean, like if you're just talking to him or he's in a very small group, he's kind of a funny guy. And, you know, in front of the group, I mean, he is deer in the headlights guy. But no, I think, hey, Shane Beamer, I'm not surprised that this recruiting is going as well as it is. And some of these things that people are seeing on podiums, and when he comes on radio shows or has beer with me and David Cloninger, yeah, he just oozes enthusiasm. That's great. That's what you want at this point in his tenure at South Carolina. Now, later down the line, we need to see how he manages games and how he develops players.
Well, nonetheless, and you're the perfect guy to write a column like this. I'll pick on Shane a little bit. This is probably the first time I could ever remember at any media days session where a head coach stood on the podium and made an offhand recruiting pitch to a tight end. Maybe next year he'll be recruiting a center or something like that without mentioning their name.
A scholarship punter.
Well, I love it, and he knows how to parse things. Like, we want to be the destination for the best tight ends in America. Very cool.
But that's another thing, though, Gene. Like this, I know we got to let you run, but that's another part of he kind of just gets it and goes with the flow. I mean, for years around here, how this has been. It's been like this since the Holtz era. You get these dummies who ask these questions. Hey, man, you going to throw to the tight end a little bit more this week? And, like, it's become a running joke now in circles. You're covering the team. You're around it all the time. You hear it. But there was a time where it was like, did he really just ask that question? And Shane knows it, and it's almost like, you know what? Let's embrace it. Let's sign some badass tight ends, and let's just be the tight end school because everybody wants us to be.
Well, yeah. As far as Shane Beamer as a head football coach at the SEC level, I don't know. The jury's still out. But I will say this. Some head coaches don't really like recruiting. They leave it to the assistants. Some could take it or leave it. Shane Beamer thinks it's an absolute blast, fun opportunity.
Yeah.
And gets up looking for a hand to shake, basically. So I think that's pretty cool if you're a Gamecock fan looking for something to be enthusiastic about.
There's no question about that. I had a former player who was in the facility not too long ago say, man, I've known Shane a long time, but what's great about this is he really feels like one of us. He cares as much as we do. So we'll see how it all works out. Season starts September the 4th for Carolina. It's July. So we have more of the hype train coming. Everybody get ready. Gene, what's in the paper over the next couple of days? What a busy week for you and your staff at the Post and Courier.
I'm glad you asked that because the first and main thing is that David Cloninger at postandcourier.com has a new exclusive Gamecock David Cloninger newsletter that we're pitching, and it's a really good deal. And you guys had David on the show a lot, and you know that he gives this kind of unique Cloninger-esque insight into the program, and I think that's a really cool thing. Beyond that, he's still at SEC Media Days. I'm up here at Clemson for a couple days, then going to Charlotte for the ACC football kickoff. So that's what we're really excited about right now. And then in a week or two, we will be introducing our brand new Clemson beat writer, and very excited about that.
Wow, we're very excited about that too, Gene. Well, we're looking forward to that, and we'll recap next week everything that we heard this week from the ACC, the SEC, and beyond. There are some interesting storylines that are starting to trickle out, and next Tuesday we'll let you answer all those questions for us then. Gene, have a wonderful week. Thank you so much as always for your tremendous work. Pass along our best to Coach Sweeney.
Thanks a lot, guys.
There you go. Gene Sapakoff with the Post and Courier. All right, that's it. We're out here. We didn't get to the SEC QB stuff, but we'll get to it tomorrow. We have a whole hour tomorrow with a guy named J.C. Sherbert. You may have heard of him. BigSpur.com. We'll talk about that then. I'm interested to hear Lane Kiffin today. I don't know about you, but I am.
I mean, let's see how straight and narrow or crooked and bent he is. Yeah, there's reason to listen.
Yeah. I got a feeling it's going to be good stuff. Who asked him about the clipboard that he threw in the Carolina game last year when they were beating the brakes off the Gamecocks?
Nobody.
I would ask him.
I knew you would.
Thanks to Hale and Gene and Darren and all of you. Have a terrific Tuesday afternoon. Don't forget your raincoats. It's coming. We'll see you tomorrow at noon on the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen.